Mr. Speaker, I rise tonight to speak to the closure of the Crofton Mill on Vancouver Island and what it exposes about the state of Canada's forest sector and the Liberal government's failure to act when forestry workers need help most. Today, February 3rd, the first round of layoffs at Crofton takes effect. Workers are emptying lockers, families are losing paychecks, mortgages, rent and grocery bills do not pause while this government deliberates. Communities are being told to wait. I'm raising this tonight because Jeff Daw, President of the Public and Private Workers of Canada, contacted me directly. His concern was simple and alarming. Workers losing their good-paying union jobs can't access the federal supports that they were promised and deserve. Crofton is not in my riding, but when hundreds of Vancouver Island workers are thrown out of work overnight, riding boundaries mean nothing. It demands a national response. I reached out immediately to 3 federal departments about removing barriers to workers' support that simply should never have existed in the first place. I acknowledge those ministers and officials who responded, but let us be clear. Workers should not need an MP running interference just to get help when mills close. I also want to recognize British Columbia's Minister of Forest, Ravi Parmar, who's working around the clock, North Cowichan Mayor Rob Douglas and Duncan Mayor Michelle Staples, who are doing everything they can on the ground, despite the absence of a serious, coordinated federal response. And when governments fail to intervene during a sectoral crisis, the outcome is predictable: economic shock, mental health crisis, population loss, and entire communities shaken to the core. This moment is a real-time stress test for employment insurance, labour market development funding, softwood lumber relief, and federal-provincial coordination. Right now, the system is failing that test. Let me explain. The government announced $1.2 billion for the forest sector. Workers quickly discovered that only $50 million of that is actually for them. That is less than 5%. Not for income replacement, not for retraining, not for communities trying to survive closures. $50 million for tens of thousands of workers. It's not support, it's neglect. In British Columbia alone, nearly 50,000 direct forestry jobs are at risk. These are mill workers, fallers, truck drivers, equipment operators, Indigenous workers, and workers in single industry towns. Forestry has sustained generations of families in my home province. And British Columbia produces roughly 45% of Canada's softwood lumber exports. Yet under the $450 million labour market adjustment envelope, British Columbia receives only about $70 million, while Ontario receives roughly $230 million. That's indefensible. It's not proportional, and it abandons forestry communities in British Columbia. When the auto sector faces crisis, Ottawa intervenes. When steel faces unfair trade action, Ottawa steps in, and rightly so. Forestry workers are asking, though, why they are treated as expendable. What's missing is a new dedicated round of forestry relief, Mr. Speaker, including softwood lumber supports that reflect the scale of this crisis and treats British Columbia fairly. Many affected workers are between the ages of 55 and 64 years old, too old for retraining, too young for retirement. Employment insurance replaces just 60% of income, and these severance clawbacks block access to support entirely. Workers aren't asking for charity, they're simply asking for action. They're asking for employment insurance replacement raised to at least 80%, and EI duration to be extended to 104 weeks. They're asking for no waiting periods and no severance clawbacks. They're asking for bridge to retirement supports for workers aged 55 to 64. They're asking for guaranteed apprenticeship completion and for long-term mental health supports. And they're asking for mobility assistance where local jobs don't exist. Crofton is the test. Layoffs are happening today, and the excuses won't pay the rent. Delay is not neutral, it's harm. And this government must act, and it must act now.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the member for his question and the opportunity to talk about the subject. The mill closure is a challenge across the country, not just in British Columbia. And we feel for every worker that is being impacted and their family with that situation. But the reality is we are faced with unjustified tariff war from our neighbor to the south, which is affecting this industry and has been affecting for many years. We've been fighting numerous tariffs over the years. But this government is taking on a series of activities to actually help the industry, and it requires profound measures. And some of those measures include, the member mentioned, the $1.2 billion, which is really to help from a liquidity perspective for the companies that are face these tariffs. The larger companies are actually taking advantage of SIFT, the Strategic Initiative Funds, to actually survive or combat those tariffs. But there's also a $500 million program that we've announced, which is related to retooling. $20 million for workers. $50 million for the workers. But the $500 million is actually to help companies diversify, have new product and changes, which is required. And it is the reality that it's going to take a while to address these problems that are specific to an industry that has been affected for so long. And last but not least, we've worked with the British Columbia government, because it's also within their purview, to have a working group with British Columbia. But we also have created recently a working group for 90 days across the country with representatives from across the country that are actually going to make suggestions to the government as to what needs to happen. And it's going to happen very soon. And we also have, as the member mentioned, the program to help from a salary, from a retraining for the employees. So it is a difficult challenge across the country. We've heard about multiple mills closure, not just in British Columbia, but particularly in British Columbia, Quebec, Ontario. We take this very seriously, and we are there to help not only the employees, but we have to help the companies if the companies are to hire those employees and provide them with work. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Courtenay-Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, feelings aren't enough. The layoffs are happening today. I'm urging this government not to abandon the families and workers in Crofton. Forestry workers don't need more reassurance, they need action. If the government is serious about preventing further job losses and supporting workers who've already lost their jobs, it must deliver real sector-specific relief now, including softwood lumber relief funds that are proportional to British Columbia's role in this industry and comparable to what auto and steel received. That means stabilizing existing mills, securing fiber supply, resolving the softwood lumber dispute with the United States, and diversifying markets through a Team Canada approach with provinces, labour and industry. But workers are losing their jobs today, and support must be timely and fair. Many have paid into employment insurance for decades. EI at 60% isn't enough. Waiting periods delay income at the very moment families are losing paychecks, and severance clawbacks punish workers for benefits they've earned. Will this government act now? Will they help the workers and families of Crofton, BC right now?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his intervention. And to make it very clear, making it obvious what is happening across the country, not just in his riding or in British Columbia. And resolving the trade is actually a challenge, just like resolving in steel, in auto, in aluminum, and forestry. Forestry has been going on for many years, and we actually need some fundamental structural solutions to be able to strengthen our industry across the country and take care and offer good jobs. We've actually been talking about the Build Canada Home Program and the Buy Canadian programs, where if we actually consume more of our wood, we will be able to employ more employees across our mills in the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.